from what I've been told from people that are close to many of the players, they thought he was a nice guy. They just didn't think he was a good coach. I just think they just weren't completely convinced by what they were being asked to do and what the game plan was. So, and I think Top's taken all this on board with other factors. If they'd been winning games, would fans have been upset that Ricardo wasn't starting? No. But they weren't. So these are big decisions. But he wanted to play a bit more like Aston Villa play. He wanted one fullback that was going to be high, one that was going to sit into a back three. And I feel that, I know, he didn't think Ricardo Pereira could be able to be that high fullback because of all the injuries. I think there's a plan. Don't think there's anybody lined up. But I think there's a plan of where they want to go.
Hello and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses. I am today very happy to say that I am joined by Rob Tanner from The Athletic. Rob, you've been on the channel a couple of times already. I think once was at the start of the transfer window and then one at the end. I had to get you on today to have a chat. Less than 24 hours ago, the decision was made for Steve Cooper and Leicester City to part ways. Before we get into the ins and outs and stuff, I just wanted to ask you what your initial reaction was to the news yesterday.
I was surprised, but not surprised, if you know what I mean. I was surprised at the timing. We just had an international break and then, the first game back and then the decision's taken. But also not surprised. And I think even Steve Cooper would admit that he knew that in this next block of games, he needed to get some results or the pressure would increase. But I think that after 2 years ago, when they delayed with the decision, Brendan Rodgers, when they saw it going in only one direction, I think they've decided to act now because they couldn't see it improving. So that's what they've done. It's a big decision, and obviously, he's only 12 games in. They appointed him in the summer after quite an exhaustive recruitment process to try and find Enzo Maresca's successor, and they backed him in terms of finances as well in the transfer window. I mean, I think they spent like gross of 80 million. Take the Keane and Dewsbury 30 million out, and that's still a substantial amount of money to spend. And we just started to see that money, like Bilal El Khanous, who I thought he was very good on that Saturday. That investment in players. But I think ultimately they just thought there was too much of a disconnect between the players and the manager. They weren't quite. There was some of the players are so ingrained with Enzo's style of play, and they loved it and enjoyed it so much that when he's come in and he's placed the emphasis more on them for personal responsibility and decision making, especially in the final third, some of them haven't quite adapted to that. There's been a little bit of resistance as well, I think, to him. And I think once Top sort of knew that was happening, and there was a disconnect with the fans as well. I mean, goes without saying what happened at Walsall, and then we heard it again at Manchester United. I mean, there's things like the Bournemouth game when they won at home, but only home win of the season at home, and the fans left at the end. As the players were walking around, there was hardly any fans left in the crowd, and I think those sort of things add up in Top's mind, and he's decided, let's make a change.
Yeah, I mean, before we continue, obviously at time that this is released, you've got a piece that has come out on The Athletic. Can you tell people a little bit about that and where they can find it as well?
Yeah, it's on the Athletic app and website. It's basically an explainer of why they've come to this decision, what's been going on behind the scenes, a lot of the things I've just mentioned about the disconnect, and where they're going to try and go next. And I think there's a plan. Don't think there's anybody lined up. But I think there's a plan of where they want to go and what direction they want to go with the next appointment. Because let's be honest, they have to get this one right.
Yes.
They're back to square one in many ways to where they were in the summer. So it's such an important appointment, especially because survival, and this is another factor in why they made the decision early. Survival is so important in the Premier League because the EFL are waiting to punish Leicester if they go down again. There will be a business plan. There will be points deductions. There will be transfer embargoes. They will hit them hard because Leicester have embarrassed the Premier League and the EFL in terms of how they've managed to avoid sanctions for PSR. So the stakes could not be higher.
And I'm guessing we'll find out very soon if there was a breach in 20.
The accounts have to be submitted by December 31st.
Okay.
So that's my understanding. So at the moment, I mean, Cooper, this is how much of a surprise it was for Cooper, because he had a recruitment meeting the week before last, and he was in there with Martin Glover and John Rudkin, and they were talking about where they could strengthen. He wanted players to come in and strengthen the starting 11, not bringing players that are just going to be hanging around, players that can make an impact. I mean, the Odsonne Edouard loan signing not worked at all. They might look at that one. There's lots of things they could be planning for. Obviously, the injuries that have happened to Abdul also might affect things. So they were planning for the January transfer window with him during the international break. So that I don't think they decided then they were going to make a change. But in the back of Top's mind, I'm sure John would have been aware of this as well. They would have been thinking, right, well, if this doesn't turn around, if we don't see an improvement, and then obviously against Chelsea, I mean, the first 30 minutes, it was like a top Premier League side against a Championship side, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They couldn't get the ball. They were just lumping it long out of to relieve the pressure, only for it to come back wave after wave. And then they give away a stupid goal. It's just all these things. I mean, the players have to have some accountability as well, because there's too many personal errors in games that have been costing them. And Wout Faes has had a couple. I think there's only 2 players in the Premier League that have made more mistakes that have led directly to goals than Wout, and they're both goalkeepers. So, there's players who have not performed to their levels. There's some players I question whether they are Premier League quality. So, the players should be held accountable as well. But Steve Cooper was the manager. It was his job to bring them all together and get the best out of them. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to do that.
You touched on recruitment there. Now, I think in the summer there was some excitement for a couple of players that came in the door. Usually is the younger, exciting players like El Canouse, for example. Do you have an idea how much input and say that Cooper did have on them signings that came in? Because a couple of them, if you look at Jordan Ayew, I mean, I think he's played under Cooper, as has Ollie Skip, I think, for the England, the youth team.
Yeah,
we were also linked with a couple other players like Reece Nelson, for example. These players have played under Cooper. So did he have a say? Because there was also a rumor, and it is just rumors. I don't want to get into it too much, but like Matt Targett, for example, he was rumored to be coming, and now he's at Wigan. So there's some eyebrow raised there. How much say did he have?
Oh, I think he had quite a big say, really, once they decided. But the problem was this summer was because of the possible points deduction that was hanging over. I mean, and this hampered them in the recruitment of the manager as well. Because I think, look, it's no secret that Steve wasn't the number one target to be the manager. Graham Potter was, but Potter was stalling. He didn't say no, but he was like, not sure. There was points deduction, the threat of relegation, having that on your CV. It was going to be a tough challenge for any manager to come in, and Leicester aren't the attractive proposition that they were a few years ago when they could go and get Brendan Rodgers from Celtic. It's the club is in a different situation at the moment, a difficult situation with all the PSR and the cutbacks and everything. So that hampered them in terms of the manager. And then once they got the manager in, they tried to get players in, and that again was causing a problem. And then so that's why a lot of the signings came late on, because then now when they sort of finally get some targets in, but. There was other. Now Ben Davies at Tottenham was another one that was a possibility, and there was all sorts that they could have done, but they couldn't. So I've got some sympathy for Steve as well. I mean, the pre-season. Let's not forget the pre-season was all changed because Enzo didn't want to go to America, and they had a couple of camps booked, and they had to sort of make it up on the hoof, and that's no way to prepare for a return to the Premier League. And it was all a bit fractured, so it's all been a bit messy, and. Now it's time for a refresh, restart the season, and see if the new man can galvanise everybody, get them together, get a game plan that they can all follow and embrace, and see if that's going to be enough to keep them in the division.
I think it's a weird situation because, as I said, it seems like the majority of Leicester fans did want a change. However, I would also say the majority also feel quite bad for Steve. And we all think he is a really nice bloke, but we just thought that he was, I don't know, I've seen some people say maybe out of his depth, or maybe all of these different circumstances, which it's a difficult club to manage at the moment, especially in the summer with the points deductions and all of that was happening with Enzo leaving. I wanted to ask you as well, though, because again, it's another thing that you touched on, and I think you touched on it in your piece as well about the players and getting the players on board. We heard a report. I think it was John Percy. I might be mistaken, as well, saying that there was a training ground bus stop between Mr. Cooper and Mr. Vestergaard.
Yeah, their relationship wasn't brilliant. He was out for quite some time. He wasn't one that he turned to straight away. You know, he got Caleb Coley in, wanted another centre back in as well. Yeah, there was some strained relationships. In terms of bust ups, I mean, you sound like that. You know, they're squaring up. I don't think.
Yeah, no.
Cooper's not that sort of character. He's not one that like tears players apart in the dressing room in front of others. You know, he's the sort of manager that gets his point across privately to them. From what I'm being told from people that are close to many of the players, they thought he was a nice guy. They just didn't think he was a good coach. And that's the top and bottom of it, really. I mean, Yannick, I don't think Yannick's the easiest guy to deal with at times. You know, he can be quite serious.
Brendan as well.
Brendan had an issue with him as well and banned him from training with the first team for a while. So, but I mean, there's you could work out who the players were that were a little bit resistant and more wedded to Enzo's style. I mean, Ricardo Pereira didn't feature at all for a big part of the start of the season until he got injured. Harry Winks came out for a game, and who would have thought that? And he's best midfielder. Connor Cody hasn't featured. You know, the players inevitably in these situations, the players that aren't featuring are the ones that will be upset with the manager and not fully on board. So yeah, there was that. But as I said, it was a general disconnect. I mean, one player that I will say seemed to do connect with him was Jamie Vardy, in terms of he wanted to learn the tactics of what they were doing. He was very interested in what the plan was.
Yes,
he would get involved, and the evidence that we see on the pitch as well. They didn't throw the towel in. You couldn't say they're not playing for him. There was effort in the games because we saw so many comebacks in second halves and games. I mean, they've been so slow starting. But I just think they just weren't completely convinced by what they were being asked to do and what the game plan was. So, and I think Top's taken all this on board with other factors as well. I think Steve can be quite a bullish character, certainly with officials. I mean, he's got 4 bookings now this season. So, and he's obviously, I was in the press conference after the game where he wanted to focus really on the referee. I mean, he always says things like, you know, we've got to be better at this and that, and it's our responsibility. And I take all full responsibility, but it's with the caveat that, you know, PGMOL and certain referees are after us and things like that. So, he was quite bullish in that sense, and I don't think that helped him either.
Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned is, you know, the likes of Ricardo and Vestergaard, obviously, that haven't played much. I think with maybe not so much Vestergaard, but Ricardo especially, and even at times for Tawu, Mavididi, I think these are fan favourites. And I don't think that's helped his cause either, to be honest with you, Rob, that he did seemingly leave them out at times when fans thought, you know, and we all think that we know football better than the manager. Of course we do, we're football fans, but I don't think that's helped his cause whatsoever with the fans, Rob, personally.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the Nottingham Forest element to it. You know, you're getting a manager in that's very popular still with the Forest fans. I mean, I wouldn't overemphasize that, but certainly that would have been a factor, I think, with some leaving out key players. But also, I think generally there's a disconnect with the fans from the club as well. So, you know, he would have stepped into that. I mean, there's still fans that are angry about the relegation 2 years ago and certain decisions that have been made over ticketing and all these other issues, cards, season ticket cards, and
of course
all this. I mean, all that this is bubbling away, and all of these things build up into those frustrations. If they'd been winning games, would fans have been upset that Ricardo wasn't starting? No, but they weren't. So these are big decisions. But Steve wanted to play in a different way. He wanted to play a bit more like the Aston Villa play. He wanted one fullback that was going to be high, one that was going to sit into a back three. And I feel that, well, I know he didn't think Ricardo Pereira could be able to be that high fullback because of all the injuries he's had, and he's getting on as well. And he saw JJ and Victor Christiansen as two young athletic fullbacks that could both do that role, and that's why he went with that initially. Victor's still got a bit of work to do, really, to convince that he is of that Premier League level, even though he's playing for his country. And there's a few others as well that have still got a bit of work to do to convince. But that's why, I mean, that's what managers do. They make those sort of decisions if that's the way they want to play, and they've got to find the players to suit that. And that's why he made that decision. Abdul, I think they were just being careful with Abdul at first because of big step up to the Premier League. And he started to come into his own just before he got injured, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think you mentioned JJ as well, though, there with that role as the high fullback. I think that is something that has, because, again, as you can imagine, I speak to many different Leicester fans after games and during games, and they all pointing that out as a real big fault in the system that's led to many goals being conceded. And I think there were frustration from fans from that as well, that there didn't seem to be a change there. And I think, I spoke to someone last week and said, it doesn't matter if it's JJ, Ricardo or Dani Alves, that they are so exposed. We're so exposed on that right side.
There's lots of factors with that. I mean, JJ gets targeted simply because he's the right back. But if you look at the goals, I mean, the big one was Man United. 54% of the attacks in that game came down the right-hand side. But if you look, and I mentioned this in an article I did last week, looking at stats and during the international break of areas where they could improve and areas they had improved, actually, 39% of down both flanks they've been attacked this season in total in all the games. But therefore, you look at it and go, well, 9 goals have come down the right. So why is that? There could be many reasons. JJ could be left exposed. It might be, I mean, Wout Faes drops deep. He gets easily dragged out of position as well, which opens up holes and channels for people to run into. Wout's not had a good season so far. There's other factors as well. Is he getting enough screening in front of Wout, and because they seem to be so lopsided at times. There's lots of different reasons, but they were looking at them and they were trying to sort those out because it was a glaring error in terms of how they were set up, to be fair.
The last thing I want to just touch on is on Cooper. Where do you think, what is next for him? Do you think, is it, do you think he will need to drop down a division and get a job there? Or do you think he won't have any problems finding another job in the Premier League?
Hard to say. This will hurt him. This will hurt him badly, to lose your job after just 12 games in. That's not great on your CV. I'm sure he sees himself as a Premier League level manager. Whether then those opportunities don't come off often enough, certainly for British coaches. So, the trend is for clubs to look abroad. I mean, who knows? Leicester might be doing that now as well. So it's going to be difficult for Steve. I think he's taken some time out. He reassessed himself and he did some personal training as well. During his time out, and he felt ready to come back with Leicester, and but it hasn't worked out. Where he goes from now, I'm not too sure. To be honest, I'm more focused on where Leicester City go now. What direction they go in. I mean, there's the usual suspects. Potter, that they've always liked. He's been in the frame twice before, never really jumped at the job. He's been out of the game a little bit now as well. Do they take a risk on a bit like when they took a risk on Enzo? I think that's probably not the right move because they, the situation they're in and the importance of staying up. Would they go for somebody with experience like David Moyes? And would David Moyes be the one that the fans want? I mean, if you're basing your decision to remove Steve Cooper on the disconnect with fans, would David Moyes be able to connect with the fans
and the players?
Yeah, and the players. Yeah, I've never heard that players not really liking David Moyes, but he's a bit of a Nigel Pearson type character. Perhaps that's what Leicester need, but
I'm thinking of the style of play, Rob, as well. The style of play, because we're led to believe that was a little bit of a problem with the current players and Steve potentially.
I mean, it was attacking football. It wasn't defensive, but they just couldn't quite see what the plan was. They questioned it. They were skeptical of it. So if you're not going out and you're fully 100% believing in what you're being asked to do, then you're not going to perform to 100%. And that's what Leicester need, 100% this season to stay in the division. And I know everybody wants to be entertained and see attractive attacking football, but we've got to be practical this season. It's about survival. Because of I've mentioned the stakes are so high. It's about survival. And if we have to sit and watch a turgid 90 minutes and Leicester get over the line 1-0 and stay in the division, I'm sure everybody would take that, because it's really important for the future that they stay in this division for this year and then build from there. So, I mean, Jose Mourinho said that his next job would be a team in the lower half of the Premier League fighting for survival. So who knows?
Can you imagine if that will happen? But yeah, I mean, you touched on it there about Potter, for example. This is the last thing I will ask you, Rob. Are Leicester City a more attractive club now than they were in the summer?
They're in the same situation for me. I mean, I know they fought off one PSR battle, but there will be more to come. That spectre is still looming. There are other issues as well. So it's a big challenge for whoever comes in. It's got to be somebody who believes in what they're doing. Yeah, it's going to have to be a special one. No, it's got to be. I don't know.
You got some inside info there, Rob.
No, I don't actually. I'm just thinking how entertaining it would be for me in press conferences if it was Mourinho. But no, they've just got to get make the right decision this time, because it does. You have to say, if you're making that decision to bring Steve Cooper in, then you're sacking him, relieving him of his duties 12 games into a 3-year contract, then you have to question the process and that decision as well. I mean, whether they were sold a pup or whether they just haven't kept faith with him, you've got to make the right decisions now. Or scrutiny will be elsewhere. The scrutiny won't be on the players and the manager. The scrutiny will be elsewhere at the club.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's already half there anyway, to be honest with you, Rob. I've just seen Moyes and Potter are joint favourite at the moment on Sky Bet. They're the favourites.
I'm not convinced Potter would take that job right now. I mean, if he's not been convinced to take it a couple of times before, that ship might have sailed.
I've seen Van Nistelrooy as well, apparently on his way to Hamburg in Germany.
Well, this is the thing, Zan. We've got to be realistic. They've struggled to recruit the right manager in the past because people don't fancy it. It's going to be a challenge for whoever comes in. So, whether you can get your first choice, I'm not sure. That's how they ended.
There we go. Well, yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens now over the next few days or weeks. We'll see. Rob, one more time, please tell everyone about the piece, and obviously Athletic as well.
Yeah, the Athletic is our football and sport website and app. We cover all the Premier League and some of the Championship as well. We even do conkers, and I went ghost busting last week at Swindon's training ground. So there's all sorts on there. So check out. I do predominantly Leicester City, so check that out.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Rob. Hopefully we will speak again in the near future. If I don't speak to you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.